Ziarat and the Last Task. During February and March of 1948, Qaid still worked long hours at his desk. His secretary at this time has said, his seriousness was contagious. There was no lightness or humor in our work. When bills arrived for him to sign, he would go through them sentence by sentence, clumsy and badly worded. He would complain, I had to prepare myself beforehand for a cross examination on the bill, as if I had been the minister who drafted it. He would say, split it up into more clauses. This should go back and be rewritten. When I pleaded, you will be holding up a useful piece of legislation, he would be relent. But his vigilance did not weaken. They can't hustle me. He would say, I won't do it. In these last months, the Qaid had to deal with a bigger world than ever before. On 30 December, the quarrel over Kashmir had been taken to the Security Council of the United Nations, where it still awaits solution. The problem dismissed so casually by Pandit Nehru in 1942 when he said that, except for a small handful of persons, there was no difference between Hindu and Muslim, was no longer a dilemma in Westminster. It was a tragedy for all the nations to decide, and beyond Mr. Jinnah's control. In March, the Qaid made one more gallant effort in drawing his people together. He flew the thousand miles to East Pakistan and endured a program of receptions, reviews, and speeches during several days. His appeal to the students in Dhaka showed that power had not changed his mind. He said, my young friends, students who are present here, let me tell you, as one who has always had love and affection for you, as one who has served you for 10 years faithfully and loyally, let me give you this word of warning. You will be making the greatest mistake if you allow yourself to be exploited by one political party or the other. From 15 April, for 7 days, Mr. Jinnah was on the northwest frontier where there were more receptions, reviews, and speeches. When he returned to Karachi, he was too ill to work at his desk for very long. His secretary has said the Qaid spent most of the day upstairs in his own room, but his passion for newspapers did not abate. Even the teleprinter tape had to be rolled up and taken to him. He would lie on the sofa running the yards of news through his fingers. Sir Francis Moody, one of Mr. Jinnah's last guests in Karachi, has recalled, I stayed with him for a few days late in May. He was very ill and spent most of the time in bed. We had a rather violent difference of opinion over the Punjab ministry. Yet, within 2 hours, he got up and said goodbye to me at 3 in the afternoon, and could not have been nicer. In May, the Qaid had appointed a new naval ADC to his staff, Lieutenant Mazhar Ahmad, who was to serve him until he died. In June, Mr. Jinnah moved, with his little court, to a bungalow at Ziarat, 70 miles or so from Quetta. Lieutenant Ahmed has described the bungalow. High in the rocky hills, with a tennis court, fruit trees, and a garden that smelled of juniper and wild lavender. He has said, we raised the Governor General's dark blue flag over the quiet house and hoped that the Qaid would rest. But it was not in his nature. The black dispatch boxes arrived each day from Karachi with MAJ stamped on them in gold. They were full of work to be done. My clearest memory of him is of his slim hands busy with papers. I think that I was always intimidated by him. He could be so formal, but sometimes he would relax and tell us stories. Usually they were planned for our good. He would raise his long finger, shake it at us, and begin, I tell you. I remember one story of his visit to the Jakko Hills in Simla, where he went for a walk with some peanuts in his pockets. He threw them to the monkeys that dwelt there, and was surprised to see that none of them moved. There was no mad rush for the nuts. Then a big, fat old monkey climbed down from a tree and went towards the peanuts. All the chattering of the monkeys ceased. They made way for their leader, and would not eat until he had eaten. When Mr. Jinnah had finished this story, he said, you see, even monkeys have discipline. We could not look at his thin body without being sad for him. One morning he said that he must have some woolen vest as the days were cold. I pointed out to him that they must be women's size, and he smiled. I bought them from a shop in Quetta, and after the first wash, there were holes in them. I said I would have them changed, but there were no more, so the shopkeeper had the vest darned. Qaidism was not satisfied with this and thought that the price should be reduced. I brought him back 5 rupees from the shopkeeper, and he said, "Good boy, you must learn the value or money." In one of the main streets of Karachi near the Governor General's house, the Masons had recently finished a realistic monument to Mr. Jinnah's faith in Pakistan. The big, imposing state bank, the nation's bank, with its own currency as a sign of its economic freedom. Nobody could discourage the Qaid from opening the bank himself when his speech was written. His naval ADC suggested that it might be sent to Karachi for the Prime Minister to read in his stead. The Qaid did not answer. He waved his hand in dismissal and the ADC left the room. 2 days later, the Governor General flew from Quetta to the capital to perform his last task. In the archives of the Karachi Broadcasting Station, there is a gramophone record of the speech that the Qaid made on 1st July. The voice is thin and harsh with age, but the inflections, the pauses, and the careful prolonging of words of particular importance prove that his experience as an actor, 50 years before, had not been forgotten. His timing of the first sentence was splendid. The words were simple enough, but he gave them unusual distinction. He said, "Mr. Governor, Directors of the State Bank, ladies and gentlemen, the opening of the State Bank of Pakistan symbolizes the sovereignty of our state in the financial sphere, and I am very glad to be here today to perform the opening ceremony." Towards the end, the Qaid made his last comment on the confusion of the world. He said, "The economic system of the West has created almost insoluble problems for humanity, and to many of us it appears that only a miracle can save it from the disaster that is now facing the world. It has failed to do justice between man and man and to eradicate friction from the international field. On the contrary, it was largely responsible for the two world wars in the last half century. The Western world, in spite of its advantages of mechanization and industrial efficiency, is today in a worse mess than ever before in history. The adoption of Western economic theory and practice will not help us in achieving our goal of creating a happy and contented people. We must work our destiny in our own way and present to the world an economic system based on the true Islamic concept of equality of mankind and social justice. We will thereby be fulfilling our mission as Muslims and giving to humanity the message of peace which alone can save it and secure the welfare, happiness, and prosperity of mankind. Every possible splendor had been summoned for this day. The kite drove to the State Bank in one of the old vice-regal coaches from Delhi, with Miss Jinnah beside him. 6 horses drew the coach, and the escort wore the startling red uniforms of the bodyguard that had accompanied the viceroys in the grand old days before partition. For the first and the last time, the people of Karachi saw their deliverer driving among them, with all the panoply of a ruler. There had been one amusing incident before the procession left the Governor General's house. The Qaid had leaned over to his military secretary, who had arranged all these splendors, and said, "Colonel no less, I hope these horses have been exercised sufficiently." Lieutenant Mazhar Ahmad has described the last episodes of the day. Qaidism was very weak and tired as he stepped into the coach. Thousands of people pressed towards him as if they wished to touch him, but the outriders made this impossible. So the near ones extended their hands towards the coach, as if this would complete their ecstasy. When we arrived back at Government House, we climbed the stairs together and turned right, towards Mr. Jinnah's room. After a few paces, he dismissed me. At the top of the stairs, I turned and saw him staggering towards his door. I knew then how ill he was, but I did not dare go back to help him. It would have been an intrusion he would never allow.